If you want to talk about global players who are really having a say in what happens, the Chinese, they are slowly moving towards the internationalization of the RMB. If we see the dismantling of the euro, what does that do to Europe's great historical narrative?
Well, I think it's going to depend very much on the extent to which the European economy grows compared to what happens in the United States and what happens in China. Now, China is still growing at 7.5% or something per annum. It's dropped back a little bit from 10%. But if that goes on for another 10 years, the Chinese economy is going to be maybe twice or even more the size it is at the moment, while Europe's just going to languish with the GDP being very much as it is. Now, that's going to make a massive difference to the whole world, to political power, to where influence lies. We're going to be in a completely different environment in 10 years' time, if that's what materializes. But my fear is that's where we're going to be.
Do you think the EU is really willing to accept the prospect of dismantling the currency?
I very much doubt if there's going to be any political consensus in the EU deliberately to dismantle the single currency. Unfortunately, I think it's much more likely to follow the Greek pattern of political developments making it just impossible to keep it going, and in the end countries just dropping out. I think it's much more likely to be chaotic and unplanned, rather like Greece, than it is because anybody's had a vision that actually getting the single currency in place in the first place was a mistake and it needs to be unraveled.
John, is there no way of salvaging the European marketplace, keeping the single currency going and still progressing forward economically?
Well, I think it's hard to see that there is that real prospect there. I think the danger is that in Europe there's a really, really tough choice between, on the one hand, keeping the single currency going at the expense of endless austerity and very little growth, or on the other hand, allowing the euro to break up, but then going through a really, really rough patch before it happens. Now, there might be a possibility of avoiding that if Germany really changed its policy and was prepared to subsidize southern Europe more or less indefinitely on a huge scale. It's hard to see that happening.